Yeah. Good afternoon, councillors, and welcome to the council meeting on Wednesday the 7th of September. And we'd also like to welcome staff and public and also the Long Beach School ambassadors. And I'll call for apologies, but everyone's here, so there is none. Next item, I'll call for extraordinary business. I know of none. Anyone got extraordinary business? There is none. Declarations of interest. Councillor Cameron.
I would like to excuse myself from the discussion around item number 6, please. I declare a conflict there. Okay,
thank you for that. We'll move on now to public forum, and Harriet Sutton, if you'd like to introduce the 6 senior students we've got here from Long Beach School. They're going to talk to us about their leadership program, so if you'd just like to introduce them and hand over to them.
Yep. Hi everyone, my name's Harriet Sutton and I'm the Year 7 and 8 teacher out at Long Beach School. I've been there for a couple of years now and decided that I'd take it upon myself this year to completely revamp our leadership program that we have got out there. So that's where we have come up with the Long Beach Ambassadors. We have got 6 very enthusiastic leaders today who are going to be sharing with you our Long Beach Ambassador program and also a proposal that they have got for you to make a few changes in regard to the speed limits that go past our school. So I will pass it over to the children. Thank you.
Thank you. Long Beach Ambassadors, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, I'm Holly Burrows and I'm head girl of Long Beach School.
And I'm Edward Pottinger and I'm head boy. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko mea hati maunga, ko haki atu kainga, ko haki atu awa, ko Kenneth tuku papa, ko Catherine tuku mama, Pottinger tuku ingoa whānau, ko Edward tuku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko e raki ti mangoa, ko haki te eri ti kainga, ko Rikaia ti awa, ko Stephen tuku papa, ko Karen tuku mama, Burrows tuku ingoa whānau, ko Holly tuku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Hi, I'm Taylor Quaid and I am the reporter for the Long Beach Ambassadors, and basically my job is to create posters for the events that we have organised, and also it's the end of the month, I think. My job is to create a report of what we have done and what we have organised in that past month.
Kia ora, I'm Rose Mackay. I'm the historian for the ambassador team. My job is to take photos during whole school events and at the end of the year help create the yearbook.
Kia ora, my name is Addison Griffiths and I'm the secretary for the ambassador group. My job is to take notes and help run the meetings as well as help with organising and yeah.
Hello, my name is Harry O'Connell and my job is treasurer, and my job is to count up all of the money we get from events, school events, and yeah.
What is a Long Beach Ambassador? A Long Beach Ambassador is a Year 7 to 8 student who encompasses and lives our 6 C values: character, collaboration, citizenship, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. These are all things we had to show in our application for the Long Beach Ambassador team. An ambassador is committed to working collaboratively and working towards having a positive influence across Long Beach School. An ambassador is recognised by all students across the school. They are respectful and open towards suggestions from students and feed these forward at ambassador meetings. Working collaboratively and communicating effectively with the whole school ambassador group is essential. And the ambassador group are a team, so these skills are fundamental towards the smooth running of our team.
How we were elected. There were 3 main stages to our election. This was a Google Form application, a presentation and an election. For the Google Form application, we had to express our interest in being considered for a spot on the ambassador team. Next, we had to share a 2 to 5 minute presentation with the teachers, which shared why we were the best candidate for the team. We could share this in any way we liked. Lastly, we had an election. After our presentations, the teachers made the decision on who the team would consist of. From here, we were presented in front of the school with our badges and were declared the ambassador team.
And we have also been able to develop a lot of skills as ambassadors, such as teamwork. So during our meetings, we are able to discuss our ideas and collaborate and help organise events with each other's opinions. And yeah.
Another skill we have developed is delegation. Delegation is not one person doing everything. Is everyone is working together and doing different things. For a fundraiser, so one person is making the poster and someone else is doing the decorations, and it's not just one person doing everything.
Also responsibility, that being a good leader and being a role model and showing the succeeds.
A highlight from the year so far would be Anzac Day service, where we contributed by placing a wreath to commemorate and remember those who had fought in World War I and II. St. Patrick's Day, where we hosted a 4-leaf clover hunt. Westpac Warrior Wednesday, where we raised money for the Westpac Foundation. And the latest one would be Daffodil Day, where we raised $508, which were all donated to the Cancer Society. Coming soon, we've got World Diabetes Day, which we'll be fundraising for that, and Gumboot Friday.
Finally, we have our proposal to you. In 2009, our principal, Mr. Simons, initially reached out to the council to change the speed past our school. In 2020, our student council spoke to the Ashburton District again about making this change. It's 2022 and the speed limit past our school still remains at 100 kilometres per hour. This is not okay. We want to know why have other schools had their speeds changed, but our rural school roads still remain a significant danger to the children who cross this daily.
Be the council who makes the change and keep our community's children safe.
Thank you very much for giving us the time to share with you what our ambassador team is all about.
Thanks very much for that presentation, and what your organisation is, your ambassadors, sounds just a lot like council. We work under the same sort of rules as what you do. You have the nominations of the people, you have the election of to get on the jobs you've got, just as we're doing election right at the moment. So you can remember to tell mum and dad to vote when the papers come out. Doesn't matter who for, just as long as they do their research and vote for the people they want to vote for. Make sure they vote. And Harry, you have a pretty important job being the treasurer, and it looks like it could be a lonely job there too with all the girls and you're on your own, but keep the eye on the money and it'll be perfect. One thing you asked about was the speed limit around the schools, and it's actually on our agenda today, but I understand you can't stay for that part of it, but we're live streaming so you can watch it later and hear what we say. We won't be setting the speed limit today, but we're making another step towards doing that. So councillors, I'll open up and ask for questions if you have any of our students. We have Angus. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. What excuse, if any, have you been given officially from council why your speed limit has not been solved.
I don't think we don't know if we have one.
That's okay, thank you.
Yep, that's fine. We will certainly keep in touch with you and let you know the process that's going to go forward. It's going out for consultation, so you will be involved. Councillor Lovett.
I'm just going to ask about the speed limit. You're asking for one road to be reduced speed, and the school sits on 2 roads. So would you like to see both roads done, not just the one you're talking about, the Long Beach and the Boundary Road?
I think we would rather have both done.
That's good feedback. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. My question is, how do most people get to your school? Do they come by school bus? Do they get dropped off by parents? Are there many that bike or walk? I can't imagine, but...
Well, it's depending. Some of us go on the bus, some of us are driven here, and then some people are bike or walk.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
How do you cross the road currently now? Do you have a need to cross the road?
Actually, one of our ambassador jobs is to get the mail every single morning. So we do have to walk across the road quite frequently, but we usually just look both ways and, try to keep ourselves safe.
May I ask a supplementary?
Supplementary.
At the end of the day, when you're going home, do you have children going out with stop-go signs and things, or no? I know.
Any further questions, councillors? If not, thank you all very much for coming in and sharing it with us. It's been enlightening as to what you're doing, and just remember to tell your parents to vote. Thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stay and listen to council for a bit. I know you've got to get away to a technology class, I think, but if you've got 5-10 minutes, you're more than welcome to sit at the back and listen to what council does if you wish. The choice is yours. So thanks very much for coming in. Well done. Councillors, next item on the agenda is confirmation of the minutes, and on item number 4, page accuracy of the minutes, page 3 and 4, any changes or additions? Page 5, page 6, 7, or 8. Can I have a move in a second that's true and accurate? Councillor Cameron, Councillor Rawlinson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next, the receipt of the minutes from the Biodiversity Advisory Group, and we have a recommendation to council there. Steve, you have something to add on the terms of reference?
Yes, good afternoon, council. Just through the mayor, one of the comments in the minutes there is not quite correct against the concept of what was just discussed in the terms of reference. What the advisory group were thinking along the lines of, they would like to see future applications for the biodiversity grants that come to council be given the opportunity to make some comments to come back to council, but the wording wasn't quite reflective of that, so we just wanted to highlight that. Sorry, that's come to us at the last minute. We've discovered that. So with the terms of reference under Ashburton District Council biodiversity funding, it stays in or that's removed? No, it needs to be removed and just indicate that future grants, that council grants would go to the biodiversity action group first, just for their comments, to be included in the table that goes to council. Yep. The biodiversity group are fully aware that the new incoming council still has to make its new structure, and they're just saying that the work they've done, they'd like to think that if it's the group carries on, this terms of reference might meet the needs. Right, thank you. Councillors, any questions of Steve? Councillor Mackay?
I've had my light on for some time, Mr Mayor. On page 7, item 19, when will we know the answer to that letter to weekend? I had my light on exactly after you moved the minutes. Oh, I didn't see it, but I picked up on my screen that Councillor Cameron and
Councillor Rawlinson were the mover and seconder, so I didn't see you.
That's absolutely correct, Mr Mayor, because that's okaying the minutes.
Yeah,
So
okay.
my question is, when will we be hearing about the reply from ECAN about the item 19, the screens?
Can we just go to that and deal with it now?
We can. I can't anticipate when ECAN will reply to us, however. Is that the question?
Well, point of order, Mr Mayor.
Point of order is?
Yeah. The reason why I asked the question was that under a policy that I moved when I was a councillor there, they had to reply within 7 working days. So that's why I'm asking the question. They would have replied by now. No?
There's obviously been no comment back. No,
I'm not aware of any, no.
To follow up on. Yep. Okay. Thank Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My light went on within a nanosecond of Angus's. Basically, just coming back to item 15, the rates instalment 1 penalty, we delayed that because of the contractor's inability to deliver the rate demands on time. Did that lead to any noticeable change in the amount of rates penalties or anything like that?
Yeah. We'll take Leanne, could you answer that very quickly?
Through the chair, there was no change. I did a check and we got the same level of payment as we did the prior year.
Right, councillors, we're done with the minutes. We're now into biodiversity. Councillor Wilson, it's on biodiversity terms of reference.
I'll save you any further embarrassment. My question's in biodiversity.
Thank you.
Membership, should we not have membership from organisations? I mean, there's some there are going to be redundant before they've actually passed. I thought those sort of things, you wanted a water zone committee rep and in the terms of reference, and it's up to each organisation to nominate. Are you locking those representatives in rather than the organisation?
Steve?
Through the mayor, the intention was to identify the organisations, as the council has stated, but the members felt they would like to see their name in there, but did recognise that the members could change over the time of the life of the body.
If I could, perhaps there's a compromise here somewhere, because it does mean when someone leaves, the terms of reference are out of date. So perhaps we can think about how we give effect to people seeing their names, but the terms of reference itself not requiring amendment every time someone changes.
Through the mayor, if it helps, what we can do is that would the names would come into an appendix, and then the appendix can be amended at any time, but not the terms of reference.
Okay. Appendix the names, okay. Councillor Cameron?
Can I talk about the biodiversity minutes, item 9.8?
No.
Donna? No?
No,
Okay.
it's not our committee. If you want to talk about those minutes, you need to go to that meeting.
I have a question, so I need to go to that committee.
Yeah, and they will answer it for you. We can't, we're only receiving these minutes. Councillor Lovett?
I was actually going to move our minutes of the recommendation to council on the terms of reference.
We just need a mover to receive the minutes as amended, and we just need to clarify what that amendment was, and I understand it's to remove a section from the
So you're
terms of
moving the
reference.
minutes to receive the minutes?
Yes. Yeah.
Seconder for that? Councillor Rawlinson?
Yep.
All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Now we have a recommendation there to council. Who would like to move that?
I'll move.
Councillor Lovett?
As
Councillor
chairman.
Wilson? Any debate? With the amendments? With the amendments? Yep. All those in favour, I'll put the motion, all in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Moving over now to item number 6, road closure, Ashburton Market Day. We adjourned the hearing this morning. Councillor Mackay, you're on now.
Yeah, what was the two new species? Can we find out sometime, please?
2 new species.
In biodiversity. Because fairly important new species. We're hearing all the time about climate change is going to destroy species.
Is that in the
Two
minutes?
new ones.
Is that in the minutes?
Yeah, number 2, extraordinary business.
We're receiving the minutes, we're not discussing the minutes. Point of order is?
How can we find out about an item of new species in the biodiversity minutes?
Why don't we ask the chair of the, Councillor Lovett may know.
There are actually 2 new plants. They've been, there was, I think they're very rare, and they're on a biodiversity officer would be better to explain it to us, but they've found 2 new plants and they've had them up in a nursery and they've propagated and they've just been named. Steve, can you add more?
Through the chair, I can give a very long botanical name, but what I'll do is I'll seek back from the advisory group the actual name of it, and I can get it circulated to councillors. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to suggest to Councillor Mackay that if he wants to know, he could pick up the telephone and talk to Val Clements, and he would know exactly what it is.
Thank you for the advice for him. Right, we're under item number 6, road closure, and we are now going to make a decision on the road closure for Ashburton Market Day. Councillors, we've got staff in front of us. Do you have any, in a report, any further clarifications or questions of staff? You have the minutes of the, or notes of the hearing this morning have been emailed to you, summarising what was said at the meeting. There's nothing there. Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor, is there a cut-off time required for health and safety and insurance from the applicant? Can we please be reminded of what that is, if there is one? What's the time limit that they have to have it in by? Is there so many days before the event, etc., etc., etc.?
Perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, I could comment. The risk that an applicant would make in giving it to us very close to the event is that it's not acceptable and requires work, and we run out of time.
Yep.
In terms of the traffic management plan, we heard this morning the roadie manager suggest 5 days was sufficient for that document. If we're being perfectly reasonable, I would imagine that the insurance and the health and safety plan should be within at least that same time frame. We should be getting it within sufficient time to check it, and if needing to work with the applicant to get it to an acceptable place, we have that time.
Supplementary, off the cuff, what in your opinion as Chief Executive would be an acceptable number of days before the event to have that information to allow any questioning of the proposal plans, etc., etc., etc.?
Look, 5 days will be absolutely fine if the plan is broadly okay. If it's miles away from being right, we might find that a real stretch. So it will depend on the state of the document. But we will say 5 days on the assumption that the experienced applicant will have those plans in broadly acceptable shape.
Okay, supplementary question. When you say 5 days, you actually mean 5 working days, I presume. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that 5 days takes us back, with me calculating, the 19th of September. Would to be 5 working days. There would, if we.
And I would just say, Mr. Mayor, that the risk the applicant takes in giving us incomplete documents very close to the event, the risk is that we can't get those documents into an acceptable shape and the event can't proceed. So the incentive for the applicant is not so much to have a deadline date as something to aim for. We would always say get these documents to us just as soon as possible so we can work together to get the event run. So there's always risk the later we leave things.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Just a question so the application is for the closure of East Street between, but But Burnett and Tancred, because they are now one way, they're going to be affected as well. We heard from the applicant this morning who said that there's a number of stallholders and they could possibly end up down Burnett and Tancred Street. So would that mean that you would have to change and apply for an application to close the 3 streets off, or is East Street, an application for a closure of East Street sufficient in that case?
It is for the closure of East Street, Tancred Street and Burnett Street. So.
It's for 3 streets?
It is for the 3 streets, yeah. Because if you close East Street, then Tancred Street and Burnett Street basically can't operate.
I realise that, but it just says at the top, it's just for East Street.
Our recommendation in the report is that all 3 roads are closed.
Yeah. Okay.
From the chair, no, I have a question. At the hearing, it was discussed about vehicles on the grass and damage done. If it was the closure was allowed to go ahead, what policies or procedures do you have in place to protect council's infrastructure?
Through the chair, the various managers of the departments would put conditions on a consent. So our open spaces manager would put conditions on what can be done on the green space around trees, what can and what can't be done. Our roading manager would look at any vehicle access over footpaths wouldn't be allowed because the block paving hasn't been designed for that. So we would just work with conditions and apply conditions to the consent that need to be met.
Okay. Councillors, no more questions. I'd like to move that council approves the closure of the following roads: East Street, Tancred Street, Burnett Street, with the times in the report, subject to conditions of traffic management plan, health and safety plan and insurance policy cited by the 19th of September. And if those conditions are met, then the road can be closed for that event. That's what I'd like to move. Councillor Latham.
I'll second that, Mr Mayor. And
Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm happy to second that. I listened with interest this morning. I felt the submitters' evidence was credible. I felt the objectors were maybe a little light on evidence, although I understand the position that they were coming from. And in my opinion, the only reason staff recommended declining this application was because of the traffic management plan and insurance matters being presented. And if we can solve those, then it should be all go. So I'm happy to support your motion.
Thanks. Moved and seconded. I just add to the motion that those plans are acceptable to staff as well. Yep. That they need to be in the proper structure. Mark?
Just had a comment. Choosing the 19th, which is the Monday, would the 16th be a better day, just to give the whole 5 days of the next week to process anything and things like that? Just as an observation, just with times and things like that.
Okay, 16th. Say again.
14, sorry.
The event's on the 26th.
The event's on the Monday. I think what the roading manager is suggesting is that if you push the resolution to have all the documentation in by the 2 Fridays before, it gives all of that week to be really clear what's going on.
And the 16th is 6 working days. 6
weeks. Yes, it's only an extra day because of the weekend. Yeah.
So this amend the recommendation to the 16th. Move is happy, second it. Right, open for debate. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. If we do approve it, I would like to make sure that the footpaths on East Street are completely clear of any tents or stalls, so that anybody that wants to shop retail can shop retail and they're not impeded by stall holders cribbing onto our footpaths. So I guess they would have to put their stalls up on the road parking site rather than on the footpath.
That'll be in the conditions that you put on. Yeah.
I mean, that could be one of the conditions.
Yeah, and that's probably a condition the staff will have. Access must be given to the shops at the footpaths. Yep. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, and I support the motion as you have worded it. I think it's important, after doing a lot of listening this morning and thinking it through, I think that yes, the opponents to it were perhaps a little bit light on specific reasons why it shouldn't go ahead. There was a lot of general reasons, but I think any event in our district does good for the district. It brings in money, and if we can keep the footpaths clear, I'm sure that all the attendees will browse through most of the shops in Ashburton as well as the stalls. So I support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Mr. Mayor, I'm against this amendment. I think the town is not ready yet. We just had it done and all things are looking right. I can see a lot of damage happening. I think, and also there's ideas that something starts up again next year with a new Boulevard Day committee. I'd rather see it for leaving for a year, nothing, and start next year with a good committee properly. So I'm against your amendment.
Motion. Councillor Falloon.
I'm also against the amended motion for the same reasons as Councillor Brown, that we've just spent a lot of money on upgrading all of the East Street area, and have it, if we were to have a minor rain event 2 days before, God knows what sort of mess that grass is going to be in. But the bigger reason for opposing it is a Boulevard Day was great 20 years ago. It is no longer relevant now. 20 years ago, Boulevard Day, I used to call Rubbish Day, because that's when retailers used to clear out their back storerooms, put it out on tables out the front, and basically it was a good day. Talking to some, they used to make $2,000–4,000 in the day type of thing. So from their point of view, it was a good day out. And also the pubs did bloody well afterwards. But retail has changed since COVID. A lot more stuff is now being done by internet. A lot of shops, as one of the submitters pointed out this morning, no longer carry the stocks they used to have. And so therefore, they do not have the stock to go out. So what have they been replaced with? They've been replaced with a lot of small traders, which everyone supports. They can come down and they can do their setup, their stalls and sell their knitting and what have you, homemade goods and that sort of thing. Great. But the bigger part is being used by food trucks and also what I call by professional flea market operators from Christchurch and Timaru. So do we want to attract those people in on the main street of Ashburton who are also there in competition with our own retailers? As I say, I think an activity day is brilliant, but not to close down the business area of Ashburton, and it is really built for a green area of which we have many, and therefore I would be not supporting your amendment.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The town not ready. I'm actually quite surprised because the particular councillor that said those words, quote, has been telling us how bulletproof the pavers are, how well laid the lawn has been. And I go back to, if I may, a farming term, that the grass was put in. By now, if it was in a paddock, it would have had sheep run over it, and it would have had a heavy roller in the first cut for the ryegrass harvest. So if that lawn is not ready, it obviously was not laid correctly. And I actually have faith that it has been laid correctly, like the councillor has. I don't believe it's for us as a council to second guess what the consumer wants to buy or how they want to shop today. And I think the proof will be in the eating, whether the people turn up for this day after such a long absence of something in East Street. And I will be very interested to see if they do. It'll actually give a guide to what may happen next year, because we were told in the hearing that there may be something happening next year. So this may give us a guide of whether next year will be successful and what form it could be next year. And I think a town is made up of a mixture of activities. And I think we should have this, and if we allow this to happen, our staff hopefully may also make it possible for the trucks to ride on those pavers so we can have the great floats on Christmas to celebrate Christmas within the Christmas parade. Because that's my next fear is, as mentioned in the application about the Christmas parade, that we're going to be told by someone that the pavers aren't strong enough, but consistently we've been told that they are strong enough, and I actually believe the way they're locked in together, they will be strong enough. So I actually have faith in the town redevelopment that it will hold up to this kind of activity. Otherwise something's gone wrong somewhere, and I don't think it has, but I'd be interested to find out.
Councillor Lover?
I will support this, but I think we have to keep the footpath in front of the shops clear, and I'd like to see our new grassed areas fenced off, or somehow no markets on the grass to mess it up, because we've spent so much money in this town, and I'd like to show this area off to the people that are coming to Ashburton what a lovely place we have created, and I don't want to see it being destroyed on the day. And if we can put some of the market sites around the side streets to keep them off that grassed area, that to me would be good. It's taking people around the side streets and perhaps through the arcade and everywhere. Spread it out, don't have it all pushed together tight down the centre of East Street. I think we can do a lot better, and if we can work with staff to make it more pleasing, I think that would be good, without destroying what we've got.
As mentioned earlier, the staff will have conditions on where they can go and where they can't go, and what they can do and what they can't do. So that'll be in their conditions to protect the council assets. So it'll be in the conditions that they put on. Councillors, anyone further speaking for or against? It look like I've got to put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? 1, 2, 3. Abstained? 1. Passed. Thank you.
Recorded against.
Record against. Yep. Item number 7. Interim speed management plan. Mark, you further to add? Martin as well. Yep.
Just a couple of things. Just reinforcing this is getting approval to go for consultation. It's not approving speed limits and changes and things like that. It's consulting on the speed limits with schools in particular being in there. Long Beach School, is it Long Beach School's included in there? It's in there as a variable 60 speed limit for a school, which is a category 2 school, which is mainly rural schools with no walking or cycling facilities to get access to it. It hasn't been enabled to have a lower speed limit under previous rules and guides, and getting approval from Wakakotahi for a reduction in a rural school. But there's a real push to actually turn it. So Long Beach School, along with other rural schools, have actually got the ability to actually reduce the speed limit of those now. And so it's included, and probably just given the previous presentation from Long Beach visitors, I think should send them some information on that and sort of prompt them and give some reasons why, given they had to leave the meeting before the hours. The schools, it's more than school, just the school frontages now. That is the general, it's the for speed limits is actually the route to schools as well, so extending further than just the frontage, which has sort of been the case previously. It's actually where students are walking or cycling to, so that's why some of the plans and some of the proposals are extending long away from where the actually school boundaries are and that sort of thing. That's why they are the way they are. But also there's an overlap of some schools. So in Ashburton, for example, there's 3 schools that are quite close by, so you do the frontage and the extension for one and you don't have much of a gap to the next one. So the decision's been made to actually consult on having that whole area as the 30 speed. It might look like a big area, but it's actually the overlap of the schools and things like that. So that was probably enough extra information, but welcome any questions, and if I can answer them, then Martin will probably be able to. If not, we'll get back to you.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Item number 6. You talked to schools, Waka Kotahi and NZTA, which I thought were the same, the police, but you never talked to the local elected people, and we have got our feet on the ground. So I think you should have talked to us as well as those people. And then I go down to number 14. If you look at those fringes for the 3K from the centre of every centre in the district, right down to Hines, Mayfield, etc., and it gives you ultimate authority. If you keep on reading down 15, 16, 17, 19, the council will be informed after you've made the decisions, which is completely undemocratic. I was elected as a councillor to represent the residents of the district, not to be told by management what I can and cannot do. I think that all that's got to be changed so that if management want to change speed limits within those circles, they've still got to come back to elected representatives with your recommendations, and the elected representatives have the say yes or no. So I don't want to see it go out the way it is at the moment.
So to help you there, Councillor Wilson, if under 19, Council will report any changes to speed limits under the interim, will report with or consult with Council. So you want input up front, not at the end. So the
I'll just clarify, and so going for consultation on the speed management plan. Any changes that get made under that plan, once it's been consulted on, we get it approved as a plan, on the general way of dealing with speed limits. The roading team will obviously go through the process of looking at what the speed limit should be based on the guide and mega maps, any information that Wakatari provide us, and also local knowledge. But that will be reported to council to get approval of that speed limit to fall within the plan. The difference now is that once that decision is made by council to accept the recommendation or not of the staff, will be that we don't have to consult on that again. Then that speed limit, once it's been adopted by council, can be implemented, and we'll go through the process in the register, put it in there, get it certified, and then that'll be the speed limit. You don't need that other lot of consultation once we've done this general consultation. The other thing I'll say, this is an interim speed management plan, and some local authorities aren't doing these, but we've had, the schools has been on our program for quite a while and would have been in place now if the consultation previously on previous reviews, but we've got funding for the signage and things like that, and that's something that's holding back a lot of the local authorities. They haven't got the funding to actually install the signs required. We've got about $600,000 to actually install the signs for these. It's quite a big cost to actually make the changes. So yeah, we're not proposing that the staff are making a decision and that's it. It's always going to be reported to council and get council adoption for it. So once this consultation is finished and the next time it goes to council, the wording will be changed in that this is the plan, this is how we're going to do it, and it's not going to be without the input of council. That was never the intention.
So council will make the final decision?
Yep. Right. Yeah. And so the only thing that really changes will be once that decision is made, we can put the speed limit in place and put the signs up. Don't have to do another lot of consultation on it.
Hamish?
Given those comments which seem to support the concern that the councillor has, does this are we clear that what we're about to adopt gives effect to that? Are we quite? So I just want to make sure that we're actually all are really saying the same thing, because if we agree that that's what we intend to do, I want to make sure that whatever we go out with accurately reflects that discussion. Are we confident we've got it?
Yes, we will be. Just in discussion with other staff, our engagement plan, or the engagement that we're doing for the consultation, we'll make that clear on there. We've already started on that based on what we know about it, but we'll certainly make that change and make it clear that that's the process. It's not that it is consultation on on principle of speed limits rather than actual specific speed limit from here to here. It's the principle of having outside schools, and I don't think there's going to be too much opposition to do speed limits at outside schools. It's the extent of it that we're probably going to end up with, and that'll still be a decision of council once we've had the consultation on reducing speed limits at schools. This is a starting point for that. Hopefully we can get through it fairly quickly, and this financial year we can actually install in place, with the intention of schools in particular to have them in place by the start of the term next year. But we'll see how we go.
Councillor,
Supplementary, but I wanted confirm that the wording will be changed that goes out for consultation.
Yes, it will be.
And another supplementary, the Wakanui Long Beach School came in with 40 between times. We're proposing 60 overall. Have you got an opinion? I thought 40 overall would endanger them more than 60 general. What's the roading team opinion on those two?
Well, currently the rule in the guide is 30 is the starting point for all schools, urban and rural. But the 30, you can go away from that. So 30 and 60 are the two options. 60 for rural schools where there is no footpaths, cycle lanes and things like that for it. So that's why the rural schools are 60, but a 60 variable speed limit. So that's why it'll operate as a 60, give that extra warning of a digital sign flashing at the times when they're at morning and night. But outside of that, it'll be still the 100k speed limit, and you have to cross the road with care like you normally do. And it's on all the roads fronting that Long Beach School, as an example. So, yeah, the variable speed limits, you're not able to have a 40 speed limit, and certainly not able to have one with a sign that has between those times. It's just not permitted now. It's either a permanent speed limit at a school or a variable one with the electronic signs to say it's a variable speed limit. One of the issues with variable speed limit, and I really like those, is the cost of putting them in at 23 schools or how many we've got in Ashburton. The cost is prohibitive. But we're going to do it at the schools, rural like Long Beach, to have those variable signs in place.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. And one of my questions was about the timing, so I'm pleased you've cleared that up. But you've got here that the interim management plan will include setting speed limits in, and you've got the developed areas to promote a safer environment. So I'm guessing that while State Highway 77 is not ours, that will be included going forward. So it'll mean that for our out of Methven towards the walkway, it'll make it easier to reduce the speed going forward.
Waka Kotahi are also putting in interim street management plans. Yes. So there are separate street management plans for the state highways as the schools. We've had discussion in relation to schools, because we've got two schools, I think, that front onto the state highway as well. So we do have to align those. Ours will probably be in place before the Waka Kotahi one, so we just have to work with that. But I know the Methven speed limit that you refer to, which isn't a school one, is included in the interim street management plan, which they are putting out for approval at their board and things like that, so, and consulting on. So.
Thank you. And just supplementary, so you're talking about the two schools that are on state highway, so that's Mount Hutt College and Our Lady of the Snows in Methven. There may be more. So how does it, I know this is all about speed limits, but getting people safely to school is really, really important. We have pedestrian crossings, we're talking about footpaths going up so that it's safer for people, but how can that all tie into this? I know we're just talking about speed limits at the moment, but how can it tie in so that we make it safer? If we're going to reduce this speed limits, we also have to make sure that people can cross roads safely as well, and we're looking after our kids getting to school.
Well, as part of the 24 to 27 speed management plan, it's not just about speed limits, it's speed management, and that includes infrastructure work as well. So we'll be including that in our long-term plan and what we want to do to make changes. It does require funding, so I'm not saying the easy thing, but the simplest thing to do for a start, and talking with other RCAs, this is probably what they're going to do as well, including Christchurch City, is that the signs in first is the first thing. Road markings, additional road markings will be the next thing, and then infrastructure, which costs more, will be the last part of that, which we can apply to get funding for. We just haven't got it at the moment. We just need to go through that process. But yeah, the signs are the first thing. Sometimes they can be the easy thing, and that's what we want to get in place first, and then we can go from there. And I think it'll develop over time because we want to be consistent no matter where we are at a school, whether you're driving to school in Ashburton or in the far north or in Invercargill or in Christchurch City. It should be pretty much the same sign, so you're actually aware wherever you are, where there's a school and where you should be slowing down, not just a sign saying 30. It needs to have a bit more explanation on that, but that's the next step.
Just before I go to Councillor Lovett, the 600k you've got in budget, how much of that is subsidised?
Yeah, that's at 51%. So.
51?
Yeah, it's a part of our normal fare.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett?
Just to clarify again, the 3k shaded area either side, we have control to reduce that down because it's very excessive out in the country. 3k's away from a school, the shaded areas you've got on the maps. They're not going to stick with that. We can bring it down if we choose.
Yeah, it's probably talking about two different things. We're talking about schools and we're talking about what's urban fringe or peri-urban, so perimeter of the urban area. It's those approaches to the townships where it's already got 50 or a lower speed limit. For example, Racecourse Road coming in, the town where you've got lifestyle blocks, it's not urban, you can have a lower speed on that. So that's part of that peri-urban or urban fringe that we're talking about, that we can make a call on where it goes. And if it aligns with the plan, we can bring it to council, say we want to reduce the speed on Racecourse Road for this distance down to 60, for example. You approve that, we can put the signs in and do that. So it's just getting that reduction coming to the township rather than just a straight 50 from 100, or we could have 80 or 60, whatever applies for that particular site. So.
Because I don't like this business of speeding and then straight down to 50. You need that. So that will cater for that.
Yeah, we seem to have got stuck on the as relating to schools, and I just wonder, why do we have to actually include urban fringes in this management plan for local roads? To me, it seems more important to do it for schools because that's the main safety part. To me, having it on all urban fringes is just crazy, and particularly for small villages like Mayfield, Hines, who are on state, in fact most of them are on state highways anyhow, but having 3 kilometres is ridiculous. We'll get to, well, like it is in parts of France, where by the time you get to middle of town, you've gone through 3 or 4 different bloody speed level changes. Now, if all of those speed level changes, and I take what you said before about schools, any changes to speed limits around schools will come back to council for final consultation and approval. Is that correct? So the same would happen for any urban fringe. Well, could we have that stated somewhere, please?
State in the minutes.
Yeah, just clarify that the 3 kilometres, does that mean if we consult on that and the plan gets approved on that basis, that means we've got the ability to make changes if we think they're necessary. If a resident approaches us within that 3 kilometres, we can make the change. Report to council saying we want to reduce this to 60 for these reasons because of the residents there wanting a change. At the moment, if a resident on Racecourse Road comes in, so the speed limit is 100 past our place, it's too fast, we haven't really got the ability to change that other than in isolation just that one road. This gives the ability to actually apply a similar thing to, but it's not saying it's going to go out for the 3 kilometres. It says anything within that 3 kilometres that's appropriate, we'll put it in place and report to council, get council approval for it, and then we can actually install it. The intention of the rule was to actually make it a bit simpler and reduce consultation. The first stage of that actually requires more work, but once it's in place, we'll make it a lot simpler to do, which is what I think councils have generally been asking for. We've just got to go through the pain of the first lot of plans for a start and the consultation, now discussion and adoption of a plan on what we want to do.
Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I lean towards Councillor Wilson and Councillor Falloon, and regarding who makes the decisions here, I'm comforted by what the officer has said, but I just point out in paragraph 14, it says the roading team will determine the speed limit as required. And then in number 17, it says the roading team will determine the speed limit required for the active user's safety. And then in 19, it says council will be informed of any changes to the speed limits under the interim speed management plan. And as I say, I'm comforted by what the officer has said about how it will operate, but I think that wording should be changed to make it absolutely clear that it's the councillors that sit round the table that will make the decision on the advice of the roading team.
Is it worth putting a number 20 that council will make the final decision?
Certainly you can do that, but in our consultation document that will go out with this, we'll make it perfectly clear that is the process and that is the case.
Also a comment, it's actually no different to what it is now. The staff determine the speed limits now and report to council on what it is. So it's a different legal instrument is the National Speed Limit Register that it's done through, but it was done through our bylaw previously. So the team would review the speed limits, come up with a proposal, put it to council, you'd adopt it, then we'll consult on it, and then once it came back consultation, then we'd adopt it. So we're not planning on changing that at all. It's just that final lot of consultation is not needed. It's just consult on the plan. Team will determine what the speed limit should be based on the information we've got, report that to council, and either adopt that or any changes, and then we can go from there.
Right, I've got 3 more questions, 4, then we're going to get a recommendation underway. Councillor Wilson.
And my question is, why have a 3 or 4 kilometre circle at all? It's an absolute waste of time. You might need to go outside that, you might need to go inside it. Why have a 3? I mean, you're going to put up a proposal for a speed limit within an area that somebody's demanded. To me, it's irrelevant. Why have a circle? It's irrelevant because you're going to make a decision, aren't you, on the necessity of the actual position, regardless of whether it's 1K, 5K. It's going to be, will be making a recommendation on the safety of that particular area, not necessarily within 3K.
Council will make the decision, but
their proposal will be within that circle.
Yeah. The 3 kilometres, Martin may correct me, but he looked at the townships and things like that, and that's covered that urban fringe as far as it is at the moment on where we'd need to go. We wouldn't need to ever go outside that, and any requests that we've had have been inside that. It was just giving the scope to be able to actually make those changes a bit easier. If we said it's just take them on a case by case, then we'd have to write that in there. So it was just seemed to be easier to actually cover an area, and then anything within that we can actually assess and put to council and say, yes, on this one we want to. It wasn't done to actually try and limit us. It was actually trying to make it a bit easier in the future. If any request came in, if it falls in that area, we can automatically make that change without having to consult on it again. If it falls outside it, then we'd have to consult on it. So making it a bit bigger just made it a bit easier. That was all. If you want that removed, then that can be a choice, but I think it might make it a bit harder for us to actually make that decision.
I can see it makes sense to have the wider scope. May not need it, but you've got the advantage of using it. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The question relates to if we have the 3 kilometre limit round urban fringe, what happens outside of the 3 kilometre limit? We want to do a change, or someone applies to do a change. Does it have to go through a full consultation process at that, or what happens?
Just referring to this is an interim plan that we've chosen to do. 24 to 27 plan should have a 3-year and a 10-year plan of what to do. And I think one of the big discussions for rural local authorities is what are we going to do with our rural roads? Do we want to keep them at 100? Do we want to have them at 80? Do we want 60 on rural unsealed roads? There'll be a lot of discussion on that just based on what we've already had at other events. But the comment I'll make on that is we're doing schools, and everyone says schools, that's great, that's easy. That's not where we're having our crashes and our fatalities. Our fatalities are on rural roads and rural intersections in particular, and yet they seem to be the ones where we want to do the least to work on. And it's that's part of the discussion we've still got to have. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Unless Councillor Rawlinson has a question, I wanted to move.
Your question, Councillor Rawlinson?
Just a minor one.
Okay.
And it was on number 19, and I just wondered, could that be slightly reworded? Because I took that too, that like Stuart did, that council will be informed, and it gives you the feeling that council will be told after the decisions are locked in. But other than that, I'm very pleased to see this on the table. We've talked about it in 6 years I've been at council, and we've finally got the way forward in a positive way, so well done.
Yeah, Hamish, way forward.
Look, I'd just comment that people, councillors quite rightly are referring to clauses in the officer's report. The officer's report isn't, as I understand it, the interim speed management plan, so we don't need to change the report that's already been written and received in order to give effect to this discussion. So that was also the motivation for my earlier question. We've got council's clear intention around how decisions will be made. The interim plan needs to reflect that as we go out for consultation. We don't need to amend the officer's report because it isn't actually the plan itself. So we understand the issues, and we've got council's clear intention from this debate, and that will be reflected in the interim plan.
Move to Councillor McMillan.
Yes, please.
Speak to the motion.
I will, yep. As we heard from the Long Beach ambassadors, their principal put this proposal forward in 2009. That's a long time ago. Since then, we have invited Mr. Simons to come along to our road safety meetings, which he has attended when he's been able to. So I think this is something that is fantastic, especially around our rural schools. So really looking forward to getting the consultation out and to hearing from the principals and everyone that attends the schools and going forward from there.
Seconded, Councillor Graham.
Yes, it was, and also point 1 tells us exactly what happened in 2019. The council set the 40 case for urban school areas and 60 for rural. So what are we worrying about?
Speakers for or against the motion? I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 8. Thank you, gentlemen. Federal funding, proposed projects. Tony. Anything further to add to your report?
No, nothing from me, thank you.
Questions, councillors? Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ashburton Library Civic Centre, another couple of $100,000. In the PCG minutes, we have approved 100,000 towards the audit, whatever it is, the sound room. Why do we want another couple of 100,000? Like, I mean, the library will be stocked with books, part of it. The audio room has got the latest equipment and the $100,000. Where is this extra money going to be spent?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's really the idea that there will always be things in this area that you could spend if you had more money. So we were putting forward this idea to council that this would provide extra resource to up-spec the contents of that room to a greater degree than our current budget. So we had no absolute firm idea in mind as to what equipment that would enable, but in general it would enable additional equipment in that room than we were currently able to deliver.
A supplementary question, do you think that's the most pressing need for 200,000 on the approval rating we've got regarding roads and footpaths and things? This is really a slush fund that you're going to hope to spend for something extra. I think it's not that important.
Through Mr. Mayor, I don't think officers would regard it as a slush fund because it's very targeted on that specific facility and equipment for that facility. But indeed, it is up to council to decide exactly what we should apply for, and hence this report. We do note that we have to comply with the criteria for the fund, which has been well set out by the DIA. And it is very much aimed at community wellbeing type initiatives across the district. But in the end, it is up to council to decide what the best use of this money should be.
Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask, will this money sort of go towards like the 3D printer and the Lego pit and things like that? Because when we went to the community originally, we said our library was going to have all these things kind of in it on a mini scale of Christchurch Library to make it a community asset. And I think it's actually important we have some money to put some stuff in this building for people to go there and enjoy. They keep telling us there's a lack of stuff and we need to look after our community.
I don't know how they know there's a lack of stuff because it hasn't been built yet.
No, and all we were doing was trying to future-proof our capacity to make the most of that facility. And as I say, we didn't have specific things such as the councillor has mentioned in mind. It was simply to have some additional resource.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Have any of these projects been earmarked in the LTP at all? And will we, or have they just sort of come about after we set the LTP?
Leanne.
Through the chair, one of the criteria is that it cannot be in the LTP as I understand it.
Okay.
Yeah, so the criteria for the money is to try and get things done that wouldn't otherwise be done. So if they were in a council's LTP, the assumption is the council intends and has the resources to do them, therefore
Right.
these things are over and above.
Okay, so the Fairfield Freight Hub was never in the
Fairfield
LTP?
Freight Hub was a really interesting one because of the timing of their agreement that council had already reached. We expected that would have been dealt with and completed prior to the need for the LTP, for the next LTP, and therefore it's not in the current LTP, right. But in council's made its call on it, but the funding sits slightly outside that.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy with the mixture in the projects.
Question.
And the question is the Fairfield Freight Hub, that's on page 39, it mentions there improved connectivity between the east and the west side of Ashburton. Can someone explain what I mean with that? What does it connect? It's not a bridge, it's on that side of town.
Thank you, through the chair. So that's referring to the fact that at the moment when we are having trains loaded in the town, what it does is lock up all the intersections. So travelling from east to west or west to east, you can often get caught for, it's not a huge delay, but it can build up a lot of traffic.
Okay. So it's
so
not
moving
that
it out.
way, it's a bit more that way.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It'll mean Havelock Street crossing won't be closed as often, is what it really means.
I thought it was further down. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. My question is, after what Councillor Wilson was asking, what is actually meant in the funding criteria, paragraph 6, supporting communities in transition to sustainable and low emissions economy? My opinion would be if a car runs for less time, that would help the emissions in the atmosphere. So therefore, if the roads were better, a car could run for a lesser time. The delivery of infrastructure in criteria 2, yes, Freight Hub would apply. Some extra tar seal on Councillor Wilson's favourite roads would help. And criteria 3, delivery of infrastructure and support improvements in community well-being. I thought community well-being would be if someone felt that they were better off and had a bigger smile on their face when they arrived home without having been jerked through the potholes. So just, can someone tell me how far off the mark I am, please? That's my question.
Well, no, I can't tell you if you're far off the mark or not. The criteria have been established by the DAA, and it's open for all of us to read the same words and make a case accordingly. And you may well be right with the way in which you are looking at those things and describing them. In the end, we're making an application to the DAA. They will decide whether our application meets the criteria. So that the ultimate decision maker is DIA.
Councillor Cameron.
When I read through the document, I have read that with regards to the better off funding proposed on the Three Waters, that it doesn't put any limits on the council to give their opinion with regard to the Three Waters, so we can say we're unhappy or unhappy with it. But when you read down like page 69, I think, yeah, page 69 in Stella, it's got the recipient will collaborate and cooperate with the DIA to facilitate the Three Waters reform program to the extent of the law. So essentially, by accepting this money, we are agreeing to support the Three Waters implementation activity. It's a little, I mean, I know it's nuanced and I can understand it's nuanced, but it's a little bit in contrast to our position where we had our chief executive and our mayor go to present, of which congratulations, you did a great job, at the Three Waters debate to the finance committee. It's a little bit not a consistent feel with it. Are we happy with that? There's about 3 or 4 paragraphs on page 69 that I'm quite interested in people's opinion of. The recipient agrees to provide the collaboration and cooperation requested. So that, of course, takes away the time of our staff, which may well be doing other things. And I do know that it was very burdensome on our staff for the original, when we went for the original application process, it again said you're under no obligation. And the staff had to work till midnight and all the rest of it. So there's quite burdensome on people. Are we happy with this document? Do you have a legal? Have you done some legal
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, if the question to officers is the political opposition to the reform consistent with our cooperation?
Yes, in a nutshell.
Then yes, it is consistent. If your question, because we have seen legal opinion that says that is true, and secondly, the Minister herself has said that opposition to the reform is not compromised by accepting this money per se. If, however, your question is more to councillors after the question time to officers around the debate of whether council should, then that's a very different question. But at this stage of the discussion, Mr. Mayor, I'm taking it to mean you're just asking us whether you can continue to express opposition and take the money to assist the well-being of the district by cooperating with the transition. Then those two things are consistent.
That is correct. I mean, I think the ship has sailed. We have expressed our opposition to it, and Minister Mahuta has said that we can continue, stop me if I'm wrong, we continue to express our opposition to it if we are unhappy with it. But when you read this, and I think we're all discussed that, when you read this, it implies that we are going to cooperate.
Oh, yes, that's what I'm saying. We are required to cooperate by taking this money. We're cooperating now. We've got a lot of people doing a lot of work now on the transition on the basis of doing the right thing for the community and the asset staff that will be going over, and et cetera, et cetera. That cooperation will continue and will be required to continue if we take this money. But council can still continue to express its political opposition.
Yes.
So those things are not inconsistent because they've been expressly permitted.
And that is where I have an issue to the councillors and the chief executive and the staff. We're required to do the right thing by our community. Our community has expressed profound dissatisfaction with the current agreement as we understand it at the moment. So this does not express that clearly in that agreement that we are going, presumably you two are going to sign.
Item number 2 of the recommendation says that, points you to the clause that's been put in. This is, we will take the monies, but we still can object to the and that is...
it does say that, but the fine print in the actual document, if you page 69, does not necessarily have a clear alignment with that.
But they must comply with the directives of the government, which they are doing. Not happily, but they must do it.
Yeah.
Because it's taken them away from other work, and since in the last month or so, funding has come through for assistance towards that of some 400,000 for our council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah,
So it was
that's a good point. But yeah, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, and I did share some concerns as expressed by Carolyn about that, but I thought, well, we have to trust in our staff and legal eagles that it feels like it's a bit of a conflict between, yes, you can have the money, but you can still object. But there's a line in the sand where if your objections go over, they can take the money back. Looking at it in a very simplistic view.
Simplistically, I understand your point, and there is I think there actually is a fine line, and Tanya might like to reflect on it. And the fine line rests in and around how opposition might spill to damage the reputation of DIA or the government. And so those, if the opposition crosses a line at some point into the integrity or the honesty of the DIA or the government, then that gets to be a little risky in terms of our acceptance of the funding. Opposing it because we don't like the structure, because we think there can be a better way, because of any of those reasons, doesn't cross any line. But if opposition goes into matters of integrity and reputation of DIA or the government, then council is putting itself in a position where they're at odds with this funding agreement. But there's a place where both of those things can exist if we choose to do so.
I might just elaborate on what the Chief Executive said as well. So yeah, he's correct. That's what the agreement says. So we can't breach goodwill. What we're doing, we've proposed a couple of amendments, including clause 4.5, which provides that the DIA can't terminate this agreement and pull back the funding if they deem we've breached that goodwill or reputation clause. So we're trying to protect council from, as the Chief Executive said, there has been legal advice that it has to be quite an overt act to breach that clause, but we're just trying to put an extra layer of protection in there. So whether DIA accepts that clause, that's entirely up to them, but that's protection we're trying to add so we don't get this funding clawed back.
Thanks. What I really put my light on for, though, was to ask a question around, I totally agree with the list. I thought as I read through that, it was great, but I thought to me there was one glaring thing missing, and it was the new entrance to the domain.
It's not missing.
It's not in a consideration.
Not really missing, no.
It's just, I think once those traffic lights are going, you'll find that people are going to have a terrible problem getting out. They're going to only going to get out at the courtesy of those travelling north.
It's happening there. It's not glaringly missing, I know that. Councillor Flood.
Just coming back to practicalities of it, do we apply for this money in one job lot, or are we going to be applying as we're ready to, as we have the projects ready to go?
No, we will make an application by the 30th of September for these projects as listed, and they'll be granted or not by DIA. So we would expect to receive the money and get on with the projects.
Right, so what happens, some of these projects, okay, additional footpaths, for example, $900,000. They give us $900,000. We spend $900,000. When that money's gone, the footpath stops going down type thing.
Yeah, yes, or someone else, i.e. us, pays for the extra bit of footpath. Yeah. They're only going to give us this amount of money.
But did I read somewhere that they're making an initial payment of 10% relatively urgently, are they?
I'm not sure. Tanya's nodding though.
That's correct. And the remaining 90% of progress payments.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just make, could we prioritise some of these areas where the money is going to? And the one I'm looking at is water treatment and changing rooms at the district swimming pools. I mean, if we can get that money in the first tranche, then we can have those up and running by the summer type of thing.
Yeah. That's a really good suggestion. Separate to us applying for the money, but an internal process where perhaps we can do some work on prioritising and get council support or approval of the order in which we might match the funding.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mayor, if there's no questions, I'm quite happy to.
No, I've still got some questions out here.
I know.
Yeah. Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question of not offending the DIA, shall I say. And the officer was quite right. In 4.5 it says, for the avoidance of doubt, if the recipient at any time makes any statement or takes any actions in opposition to the Three Waters reform, such statements or actions shall not be deemed by the DIA to be a termination event under clause 4.3 or a breach of any of the recipient's obligations, conditions or warranties. So, well and truly covered there. I've got no problem with it. Where we spend the money when we get it, I think we let the staff work out the priorities.
Question, Councillor Wilson?
Yes, number 3, I presume, my question is, if DIA said you can't spend it on that particular item, you will have the power to say, well, how about we put that money into one of the other items? Will we be allowed to do that?
The intention of recommendation 3 is that the DIA doesn't accept our changes to the funding agreement. And with, in all honesty, I expect that to be the outcome, and I'm starting to hear other councils who are ahead of us in making their applications have also suggested changes to the funding agreement and are getting none of them accepted. So the real issue is likely to be, and this is what we anticipated, the real issue is likely to be that their funding agreement, which has the concerns that Tanya has poured through and suggested changes to, will not likely be accepted by DIA, and then we have to have a process to say, well, we would have preferred that, we tried that, but we're going to have to accept the funding agreement in the form the DIA wanted in order to accept this money. And we were looking for a process that was going to be appropriate but agile to weigh up that situation and to proceed or not. So that's that situation that was intended to cover. If DIA came back and didn't approve a particular part of the proposal, then they would be in effect seeking an alternative proposal, which we would, intention would, in that regard, we would come back to council. So that clause was aimed at the most likely situation, which is that the funding agreement will not be altered in any way from the template. We don't like it, and we'll have to make a judgment call as to whether we proceed or not, but in a reasonably slick manner.
Councillor Cameron, you have a question?
Yeah, I have, please.
Go.
To the Chief Executive, as a result of that, I have another question. To the template, are you talking about the template I just commented on?
Yes.
We've made changes to that in red.
Yes.
So you're saying they will not accept those changes?
I think it's highly unlikely they will accept them.
Okay, because to Roger's point, it's not really a matter of, you know, we can express our displeasure because we have expressed it and will continue to do so. It's more a matter of we have to facilitate the process, is the point I'm getting at, which I'm not happy about. With regards to the list of funding through the chair, items to be funded, they all look great. We had Waka Kotahi the other week talking about the clip-ons on the bridge. They're not in that list, and that's a priority for us, but that would be they would have a 51% attached to that, would it not? Or would that be totally funded?
It's not our bridge. It's not
our bridge. No. So we would not. I thought one side was ours and one side was theirs. That's what I'd always been told.
We maintain one side.
We maintain one side.
It's just the maintenance, yes. Just the maintenance.
So it's not our bridge, but we agreed to maintain them.
Just sweeping and keeping the one side clean.
Agreement. Is all I can say about that. Yeah, okay.
It's a state highway bridge. It's not our bridge.
I understand that, but it would be good to have those so people can cross the bridge safely, would be good, prior to waiting for whenever Waka Kotahi decide to do it.
It's not our bridge.
I know, I've heard that, Nick.
I don't come work on your house without you being asked to do it, so it's not our bridge. They'll fix whatever needs to be done to their bridge. Councillor Falloon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know whether I read this as part of this whole thing or I dreamt it, but was there going to be some funding made available to help council cover officers' work in supplying information to DIA?
Yes, so you'll see reference in this report. He said without his glasses on, but there is a...
Section 18.
Here we are, the clause 18, and below you'll see reference to the transitional funding. Now transitional funding is not the better off funding. Better Off funding is the 4.2 million to spend on wellbeing projects. The transition funding is the $437,000 they've granted us to support the work that we are being compelled to do by taking the Better Off funding.
So my question follows on from that. We know it was going to cost us a lot of money and staff time to comply with the information they were wanting. Have you any idea of what percentage of that staff cost this $430,000 will cover?
No, it is a really good question, and the 437,000 hasn't been built from the ground up, so it hasn't been built on an assessed need of our time and effort. It's been simply an allocation from the government to all councils for an amount of money to support the transition. And we in fact are free to spend it on any transition activity that we deem the most beneficial to this council. So we could engage consultants to work on the transition. We could put our staff time on the transition and get consultants to backfill business as usual. There's a whole combination of ways in which this money can support the transition. One of the things we are finding is that, as you can imagine, 67 councils are approaching transition, and consultants are tapped out. Staff are trying to do BAU and transition, and money alone, while it's a very welcome signal, because we've been talking for 2 years about the costs of transition, so it's great that that's been recognised, but money alone doesn't suddenly magic up people to do the work. So we're still working through, particularly with Neil and now Leanne, thinking about how that money can make the transition go as smoothly as possible. But we haven't got to the point of saying percentage of staff time or those sorts of things yet.
Roger, have you got a question? Because I've got Lane's ready to move it. If you could just go off, Lane, what's your question? Because we are going around in circles with these questions.
I do have a question, thank you Mr Mayor for your indulgence, to the Chief Executive. When I just quoted clause 4.5, after that, in response to another question, I understood him to say that, in his opinion, the DIA probably wouldn't accept that. So, where does that leave us?
Well, exactly. That's exactly right. It leaves us in a little bit of a conundrum. What we want to know, our intention is to put forward a funding agreement that we think is fair to this council. If DIA accepts it, fantastic. If they don't, which I think is the more likely option, if they don't accept it, then we have a judgment call to make whether we accept their money and their clause that we don't prefer, or whether we say that we're so uncomfortable with the clause that we don't take the money.
And number 3 in the recommendation gives the power to negotiate that. We've got to start with something. Councillor Brown, you wish to move?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'm quite happy to move the motion on page 32, that Council approves the proposed project list in Appendix 1 for application to Better Off funding. Point 2, that Council amend the Better Off funding agreement as contained in Appendix 3, and that if the third one is that if required, Council delegates authority to the Mayor and the Chief Executive to further negotiate and finalise the terms of the funding agreement with the DIA.
Second to Councillor Lovett.
I'll second it, and I think we've got some good projects here for the funding.
Hope for debate, discussion. None. Councillor Brown.
Yes, like I said before.
Speak to the motion.
I would like to speak to the motion. I think we've got a good broad amount of projects, what is great. Some is roading, some is library. It's great. If we can get it, we might as well take it.
Councillor Flood.
Yeah, I'd also support the motion. I mean, we may not all agree with the last detail of what we're putting up, but I think what we've got is a good mixture. What we're doing is answering what they've asked us to do and what we're doing with applying for the funding. I think it's been a good choice of projects and therefore it deserves our support.
No further speakers for or against. To put the motion in favour, all in favour please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item number 9, dangerous and unsanitary buildings policy review. Mel and Michael. Questions? Councillor, anything further to add? Mel?
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Questions? I just have one question. I was reading in the paper the other day of a house that had been burnt and has been left for a year now, and it was in the paper. There's nothing you can do about that, apparently, from what I read in the paper. So how is this policy going to assist you, or and if it can't, should it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this policy, the rules haven't changed. It's just minor wording, so it's a very high bar to get a building classified as dangerous or insanitary. We've done it maybe 7 or 8 times in the time I've been here in the last 10 years, and one was actually revoked by MB, where I had said it was insanitary and not weatherproof, and they disagreed with their experts. But then we worked with the owner to make it weatherproof, and we got the right decision. But it is a very high bar, and with derelict buildings or burnt out buildings, it's really up to FENS in terms of fire hazard to work on that. We've got nothing. We can't force building owners to maintain them.
Councillor Mackay.
Mr. Mayor, my question is, because I'm intrigued, in the staff recommendation, minor updates and no consultation. When we go to the policy proposed, in the first kind of paragraphs, one-liners there, special consultative procedure required. So we're going to, if I got it right, in the recommendation, the officers say no consultation, yet once we pass this policy, it's going to say special consultation procedure required. Am I missing something? What am I missing?
Mel?
Through the chair, if you have a look at point 4 of the cover report, we note that while legislation says that we should use the special consultative procedure, the changes that we're recommending are very minor and don't actually impact on the implementation of the policy. So it's our view that we don't need to consult.
Okay, to follow on, if I may, supplementary.
Yep.
Why don't we say that in the policy, in the draft policy, that under minor changes will not be, consultation will not be required?
I think through Mr. Mayor, this is a review of the policy that we're referring to as not requiring consultation. The policy itself is not about its own review. The policy is about the dangerous and unsanitary buildings.
Correct.
This report, the recommendation that we don't need to consult is on this very minor change to the policy.
Correct.
Yep.
So why don't we say in the policy, if the changes are minor, no need to consult?
Thank you, through the chair. We could put that into the policy, but that then is starting to make the policy quite prescriptive, and that's the beauty of having the cover report, because that's when we're doing the significance and engagement assessment and actually evaluating the level of change, if that's actually going to trigger the need for an SCP. So while we could put it into the policy, I'd be reluctant to advise you to do so. It will ripple through a number of policies if we're going to take that approach. So I feel that this way, in proposing it in the advice that we're giving through the cover report, is our way of covering it off. If there was a fundamental change to this policy, absolutely the SCP would be being used.
Councillor Alston.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. have we got no authority? People have approached me in reasonably tidy street, and there's one section, grass over the fence, kids' lawn, kids' toys everywhere, wrecked cars in the drive. Have we got no authority to say, look, you've got to tidy things up, or a fire hazard, or can we do anything about places like that or not?
Through the chair, it is very difficult. We could look at it through the Health Act as well, in terms of does it cause injury or health issues if a section's overgrown or anything like that. Long grass and all that is a fence issue again. That's been removed from our jurisdiction. Yeah, it's a very difficult one, councillor. I really struggle with it myself to enforce.
Joan?
Through you, Mr Mayor, just further to what Michael said, we have taken action previously, mainly through the Health Act, because we've had issues with homes that are extremely dilapidated and are no longer connected to a sewer, or in some instances don't have running water, and they're very difficult to deal with because there are mental health issues involved, where a person has remained living on the site under those conditions with no functioning toilet. That's when we have to try and get help from the hospital, social services and what have you, to try and provide support to the person who's living there while we make alternative arrangements. Even under those situations, it is quite difficult to do. As Michael's mentioned, with overgrown vegetation, we no longer have control over that. That went to FENS, and they have a different standard to what we used to have about overgrown grass and shrubbery. Their bar is that it has to be capable of catching fire by itself. So that's, again, not something we can really deal with. And I don't think the public understand that local government is actually very constrained in what it can do, that we just don't have the powers. There is one situation years ago when I worked for Christchurch City Council where we successfully applied to the court for an order to have a house demolished, and that was under the Resource Management Act. That's extremely difficult to do. It took about 2 years, and I couldn't remember the cost, but it was massive. And that was on the grounds of how it looked from the street. Quite often you'll find with dilapidated homes, they don't look that bad from the street, but they might look absolutely terrible from the neighbours next door, but that cannot be taken into account. That's not considered.
Further questions? Would like to move? Councillor Falloon. Councillor Rawlinson. Open for further debate. Being none, put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. I'm just going to adjourn for 2 or 3 minutes. I have to leave and go to another appointment. So Councillor McMillan is going to take the chair and conclude the council meeting. I'll leave that for you.
Thank you. We'll resume the meeting. So we're now up to item number 10, which is the end of year performance report. And we've got Tony there. Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Tony? What I'd quite like to do is go through this page by page. So if anyone has any questions, we can ask in order instead of sort of going back and forth, if you're happy with that. But do you have anything to add?
The only thing I was going to add was that it's actually been a pretty good year in challenging times. We've achieved just over 74% of our targets.
That's great, thank you. So councillors, we'll just start on page 85. Any questions? On drinking water measures? No. 86. Councillor Falloon?
Yeah, just coming back to 85, when did most of our water schemes lose their protozoal compliance as a case of losing our secure water status?
Through the chair, that was with the drinking water standards. As soon as those were implemented, we effectively didn't have that status. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions on page 87, wastewater? 88, stormwater. 89, stock water. 90, transportation. Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Yes, volume of metal replaced on unsealed roads. We promised we would put 48,000 cubes on, but I see we only put 28 because we used 26 on flood repairs. In other words, normal roads were 20,000 cubes short. No wonder people disapprove of our roads.
Probably more of a comment than question. Thank you. 91, waste reduction and recovery. 92, public services, community grants and funding. No, I'll keep going. 93, 94, open spaces. Any questions on that? Councillor Mackay, sorry.
Yes, Madam Chair. That gravel, was that on flood, was that roads that were damaged by flood? In actual fact, the gravel went on a road.
That's correct. Yep.
That's correct, thank you.
Yep.
Keep going. 93, community services. 94, open spaces. 95, recreation facilities. 96, regulatory, district planning. 97. I think we get quite a bit of information from our activity briefings, but go to 98. 99. No further questions. There is a motion recommendation on page 82.
I'll move
Councillor
that.
Wilson, move that. Seconder, Councillor Lovett. Any debate? Nope. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you. Next up, thank you, Tony. Next up, page 100, item number 11, Ashburton welcome signs. We've got Steve to speak to this. Okay. Just waiting for Simon to come. Oh, coming through here? Okay. I'll wait for this item. We've got the report there with the 8 options developed. Thanks, Simon. Is there anything that you would like to add to your report?
No, nothing else to add, thanks.
Any questions? Councillor Mackay.
Yes, Madam Chair. What actually really happened here? Obviously the budget wasn't big enough to do the whole project, or did we spend too much on a consultant to work out some signage? Because this council not seeing this project through could mean that the work done to date could be pushed to one side by a new council. That's why I'm asking the question. What really did happen?
Okay, I'll go to Steve.
Why did we run out of money on this one?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to answer that question, the budget didn't run out. There was no budget set aside for this project. From existing budgets, we were able to work on some design concepts and gather the thoughts back from council on this. The report's indicating that these are the results of the surveys, this is the results of some of the designs we've had done, and indicating that if council are sort of supportive of it, the way to get the money would be for the next incoming council to consider this as part of the next annual plan process. That's where the big dollars is actually the construction of the placement of these signs.
Okay, my supplementary question is that councillors might like to consider in the next few moments is where we get the money from. How about reserves is my question.
Thank you, Councillor Falloon.
My question is are we going to go out with the final designs and consult with the community on this one?
Steve?
Through you, Madam Chair, again, if we do this project, or as council considers this project as part of the annual plan process, then we would be going out and consulting with the community on it and to get the feedback. We haven't done a business case and full costings on the project yet because sites have to be determined exactly where it's to go and then do the costings. But that would be the first port of call, would be to judge what the feel was, and the best way we felt was probably through an annual plan process.
I've got a question. Is there any way that the signage could be funded from a service club, from a group, someone like that, instead of it being a council project? We've done all the background, present these ideas forward, and maybe someone else might pick it up.
Through Madam Chair, certainly. This could be picked up by an external provider or a service club or whatever. And a number of areas in New Zealand I can think of, that's how these projects have got off the ground.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Simon, just can you explain to me, there is the A, or whatever you call it, the Ashburton A has the most votes, basically 4 out of 10. So is that the one we're going to do, or are the 3 we picked for consultation? How's it going from here?
So the decision to send this out to you was made at the workshop, if you remember, earlier on in the year. That's a council decision, I think, as to how you want to sort of, go out to the public. Whether you minded to go out with just the A, which was your preference as a group, or whether you want to put the top 3 out for consultation and see if there's other ideas. I think we've got to a point where we've got some evidence. We've had some preliminary work done. You've had a view as council. Really, the budget. We don't have $150,000 available for the 2 signs. As Steve said, that would be a business case to the next LTP process, but how you're minded to move forward from here is your decision.
So basically, that might be the next council who makes a decision that to go for the first 3 or the one with 4 votes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lovett.
I'm thinking the same way, because we're so new to the end of our council term. Should we not be putting this in front of our new council, these designs, showing them and letting them take this forward as one of the new council's projects? Because
it's really, Madam Mayor, if council adopt this recommendation, it will go into next year's annual plan, which will in fact be considered by the new council. So we'll be doing exactly that. Yep.
And give them all these signs that we have sitting here to go through, seeing we've researched them. And
but this would be a business case, I'm guessing, that would go to the annual plan. Yeah.
If nobody has any more questions, I would be delighted to move the motion.
Can I just have one more question, and that was this project considered for the Better Off funding at all? Was it mentioned, or was it?
It wasn't included in our recommendation to council, which council just adopted, so it hasn't, it's not on that list, no.
No. But was it even mentioned that it could go in, or was it just something that just think that it needs to wait another year to? Okay, that's right. Councillor Cameron has moved the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rawlinson?
Happy to second it.
Is there any debate on this? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Simon. Our next item is item number 12 on page 110, and it is the use of the council coat of arms. You're welcome. Heather. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tanya, and we do have Luke here, so is there any questions on the report, or is there anything that you want to add, Tanya? Question from Councillor Rawlinson?
Yes, just on page 115, in terms of the specific elements of the coat of arms, I had a bit of a chuckle. The first comment was the muzzled bear's head comes from Lord Ashburton, but to me the muzzled bear's head looks very much like a horse's head with a halter on it. Being a horse person, can't see how that looks like a bear. But I just question it, how that...
But it is.
Hamish, yes.
Yeah, so whether it looks like it or not, you may well be right, Councillor Rawlinson, but it actually is a muzzled bear, because that's what Lord Ashburton's coat of arms had back in England. So we know it's a muzzled bear, but whether it looks that way
very much like a horse, a pony's head. Thank you.
Councillor Lovett.
Before we give it out, I actually would like to see us develop a policy around the coat of arms and put some rules, regulations in it, because I think we could end up with a whole lot of other organisations coming to us once they see this goes out and wanting to use it. And I think we have to be careful down the line that it doesn't get put on fundraising and stuff used for commercial use, because it is a very protected emblem, and I think we need a policy with rules and regulations around the thing to protect it. I just don't want to see it just thrown on papers by anyone around the district, because it is you give out these certificates and stuff, and it is a very special coat of arms.
Tanya? Oh, Hamish.
I was just going to comment, it has to be by decision of council. So you've got complete protection against commercial use or any other use. You can consider, in my view, this application on its merits, and that doesn't create issues that you might be worried about. It could well be that we make a note for our work program that a policy could be developed, but I wouldn't suggest you do that before considering this particular application, because that policy is not in our work program. It will be a considerable number of months before that would reappear, and in the meantime you've got the merits of this case to fairly consider, and it's well within your purvey to do that now on the merits of this case. But there can be no blanket approval of the use. It can only be by council decision, so you're protected against other applicants if you didn't think they had merit.
And if you read number 17, it says, we previously had a coat of arms policy which allowed the Mayor CE to authorise, and that was revoked in 2017. Councillor Mackay.
Can I move?
You can. Yes. No further questions? No. Councillor Brown, are you seconding?
Madam Chair, it gives me great pleasure to move this recommendation, and I urge councillors to vote for it. The Air Cadets would have much mana if they could have this official recognition from council, and the job that they do and the role that they perform in this town, I think, is beyond repute. And I have been to a number of parades, and I've also witnessed 3, I think it is, young people that have come into this organisation, and they have turned out to be fine, upstanding citizens because of this organisation. And I think it's great that the way it is, it's a special decision of council that this can be or cannot be dealt with. I know one instance when I went on a trip to China, I took a number of the blocks of wood with the coat of arms on that we had, and I gave them away to sister cities and government, very careful to only give them to government organisations, and they straight away went in the cabinet. It was not a tea towel, it was not a picture, it was a coat of arms of Ashburton, and they were highly respected as official gifts of that trip. And I have had the opportunity to see photographs 3 years ago of that cabinet, and that coat of arms was still in there. So it advertises New Zealand around the world, especially Ashburton, but it has to be used only in government functions. And I think the Air Cadets, as part of the services of New Zealand, are a more than worthy cause, and what they do for the town. I fully support and ask you to fully support this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, speaking for as well for the same reason. Ex-Dutch sergeant, I know it's quite important for the younger ones to have something to look at and to treasure.
Any further speakers for or against? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? No. Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Tanya. Next, we welcome up Erin for the financial reports, June 2022, and this is a draft and the preliminary report for June 2022, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So we'll take this. This is a preliminary report, so it's the first draft report prepared to a management level, and at the point where it was produced, there's further work that's being carried out for annual reporting. And I'll take the report as being read.
Thank you. Should we just go through this again, page by page? Oh, I've lost my pages now, sorry. 119. Jumped forwards for some reason. So everyone's in the main, it keeps jumping forward. Everyone's in the main agenda. So page 119. Just put your lot on if you have a question. 120. Councillor Falloon.
I take in the income and expenditure summary, we've got $5.6 million being the gain on revaluation. I take it that that is the gain on the last government revaluation of all of council properties, and in the final accounts these will eventually be taken out and added to our revaluation reserves.
That would relate to those revaluations that have been processed through for year end at this point. So we've got gains on investment properties that would be in there at this moment in time. So there are further, I presume it would be gains this year with the indices and inflation being quite so high coming through.
So very much it's a draft of the draft at this stage.
That's exactly right. It's not at the point where it's ready for audit yet.
Yeah.
Okay, page 121. 122, Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor. I see transportation capital expenditure. We didn't need to borrow. Loan required was lower than originally budgeted. I thought we were pretty stretched as far as roading goes with the extra flooding and put 1.7 million in. Why did we not use the total amount that we'd budgeted on borrowing?
Through the chair, the 1.7 is relating to the 22-23 year that we were talking about during the annual plan. There was 300,000 that was passed to come through in this year.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Wilson?
But it says there, loans required will be lower than originally budgeted. Did we forecast to spend more capital than we actually borrowed?
Neil, do you want to answer
I can add, when we budgeted for the CBD, we did budget on a worst case scenario with loans, and we identified that we may need more loans. And as it turned out, we got some more subsidy than what we expected, so we didn't need to draw on the loans that we had originally intended.
That's a very good answer, Neil. That's the answer we like to hear.
Thank you. So 122, we'll go to 123. 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130, stock water 131, 132, sorry, Councillor Mackay.
Madam Chair, could I please have further explanation? Go to the reason for the variance in the stock water. The budget relates to the provision of fish screens. Now, I've had a letter from the regulator to say that we have to do something about the fish screens, but in the meantime, before we got the letter, we actually moved the money elsewhere. So how much notice are we going to take of the regulator in their letter that they've sent to us, if any?
Through the chair, we have responded to that notice, and I think yesterday or the day before we've been invited to a meeting with them to discuss this further about the fish screens and the way forward.
So what's our preliminary answer when we're asked if we've still got the money?
So the money, as Mr. Guthrie mentioned in his last report, is that we were, in terms of the budget, we replied back to ECAN saying that we have got money in the budget to undertake investigations and perhaps design of the fish screens. but not the installation of the fish screens. So this money in this budget here was an amount some years ago for what we thought fish screens would cost. The scope of that has now changed considerably. So, hence we haven't budgeted any further, and we've delayed until we can get to the bottom of whether we can close intakes and thereby not install fish screens. But now that we have replied back to the ECAN with our response about installing the fish screens and explaining our position, we will be meeting with them in a few weeks' time to discuss that and take this further.
Supplementary, can I please wish you all the best at that meeting and hope that you can carry out what council would like you to carry out without having to build these fish screens, incurring extra expense only to close them at a later date.
Noted.
Thank you. 133, 134. Erin, I had a question from the Mayor regarding the 404,000 unfavourable and whether we should just be keeping an eye on what's happening. I think those were his words. I don't know whether Neil has anything to add or...
Yes, this is largely driven by the cost fluctuation. Waste collection is largely, involves fuel and costs and trucks, and the cost of fuel has increased, and the consequential cost fluctuations to the contract have increased above what we had allowed for in the budget. So it's something we will need to consider going forward with our future budgets. It is a factor for our solid waste collection contract.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam. The 35,000 for management of the Hines closed landfill, it's been closed 20 years. How long, what do we have to still do to it? I thought it would have been well and truly dead now.
Yes, so we have to still monitor and report on closed landfills, and ECAN have been in contact with us, and they are requiring more information and more reports and more detail. So we have to keep a budget to continue reporting and providing the information to them.
Thank you. We'll keep going. Page 135. 136, 137, 138, 139, 140, 141, economic development, 142, 143, 144, parks and open spaces, 144, 145, 146, 147, 148, I'll just keep going, 149, 150, 151, 152, 153, 54, 155. Councillor Cameron.
I want to go all the way back.
Oh, you don't.
Madam Chair, I do indeed. To page 140, reserves and camping grounds. 15 favourable, 1.5 million favourable. 1.5 million was budgeted for the West Street car park. This will remain unspent at year end and be subject to a carryover request. Investigation has started. Can we have some elaboration on that investigation? Is that through a resource consent to see if we can put a car park there, or is that what that investigation is?
Correct.
Hamish.
Okay.
Oh, and it also involves lease discussions continuing with Kiwi Rail to actually get access to the land.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilson, what page are you on?
143.
Okay.
Commercial property. 2.3 expenditure regarding purchase of property for the second bridge. How come that's there when we only passed last meeting to go ahead to instigate the purchase of the approach of people that hadn't? This was a bit preemptive, was it? That money was put in the beginning of the year when we hadn't actually decided to approach them.
Correct, they may have approached us, so we still had provision to buy the property.
Okay, I've forgotten what page we were on. 155, thank you. Oh, no, you're back to what page?
No, we're not going too far away. We're going to page 143 on Stella. Economic development, capital income, commercial property. No, that's wrong. That's not what I want to go to. Oh, it is basically. Sale of Glasgow lease properties are 2.4 million above budget. We are developing a strategy, a policy, a decision making around what we're going to do with that revenue in terms of investment for our ratepayers. What's our ETA on that? Do we have any sort of timeline around that?
Hamish.
No, I'd have to get back to you, I'm sorry.
Shall I leave that with you, Hamish?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, any other pages before 155? I'm going. Okay, 155, 156, balance sheet, councillor Falloon.
Yeah, just a question. Why have our accruals blown out from $4 million to $10.6 million? Is that just a timing thing, or what has gone into accruals?
Where are you, John?
156. Erin?
Through the chair, I'll have to check that out because that does seem rather high. They will be higher at year end, but that does seem quite high. So I'll chase it up and see what's going on there.
Thank you. 157. Councillor Falloon.
I see this current year we've borrowed $20 million and we've still got $20 million, that's on page 157. If you go down to page 159, we've still got $18 million sitting on term deposit at quite good rates. The question I have though is, was the decision made to borrow that extra money back in May to stave off further interest rate rises that we're about to get when we knew we could get a reasonable deposit rate, so we're playing an arbitrage of less than 50 points?
Through the chair, that wasn't actually the plan. It was to do with us needing to move our internal debt to external, and so that's the reasoning. The timing was good because of the low rates compared to now, but generally that wasn't the intention.
Page 160. And then page 161, we've got the EA Network Centre. Any questions on that? If not, we have, oh sorry, John, apologies.
Yeah, I did notice that. I know when you enlarge it, you'll note that our income is well down, which is being blamed on COVID, as it should be. But I noticed that our personnel costs have not quite followed it down and are actually above budget, and I just can't understand that.
Steve.
Particularly when we have been short of staff. I mean, every time we've had an activity report, they say we're short of lifeguards, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
Is there something wrong with management here, or what?
Just through the chair, just to answer that councillor's question, the budget line you see there for staff actually includes a whole lot of other costs associated to it, like all the additional health and safety components we had to put into running the facility during COVID are also a line item to that. we worked very hard on controlling our labour budget, and if I recall, it was below budget because we had gaps in our employment regime. You'll also notice we worked on our expenditure. So our expenditure line, we tried to cut costs where we certainly could because we knew our income was reduced coming in. But that's the explanation towards that budget line. It covers a whole lot of other items associated with employment of staff.
Thank you. I just need someone to move that we receive this report. Councillor Falloon, and a seconder. Councillor Brahm. All those in favour say aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you. Our last item is the Mayor's report. I'll take that as read. Councillor Brahm.
No.
Thanks, Erin. Any questions on the Mayor's report that one of us can answer? No? Would someone like to move? I'll move that we receive the Mayor's report. A seconder, Councillor Rawlinson. You also note that there's been sorry, I'll put the motion in a minute, but there's been a report from the Canterbury Mayoral Forum circulated on Stella as well. So I'll put that motion that we've received the report. All those in favour say aye. Against, no. Carried. It will be afternoon tea time. Yes, Councillor Mackay.
That Mayor's report, do we discuss that or not? The Mayoral Forum report, or is that not for discussion? What happens with that?
It was just for information, I think.
Information.
You can discuss it if you wish, but and Hamish would have attended those meetings, but obviously with Neil not being here, happy to.
I just noted with glee, Madam Chair, that we're going to be wetter in climate change than what we, in our climate change policy, which was taken from the Mayoral Forum a year ago or 2 years ago, than first anticipated. And I was delighted. We're going to be wetter in the summer and wetter in the winter.
Excellent. Thank you.
According to that Mayoral report.
Thanks for that comment. So we will break for afternoon tea. Do we move into public excluded now? Yeah, so when we return, we'll be going straight into public excluded. So back here about 3:30. Is that okay? Yep. Thank you.